Love in the Fast Lane. Chapter 4. Without further comment, Trey pushed a button on his steering wheel, and after a moment, the radio went silent, replaced by the sound of a phone ringing through the truck's speakers. The electronic trill echoed twice before a woman's voice came on, crisp and businesslike, despite the informal greeting. "Andy just called looking for you," she answered, the slight edge in her tone unmistakable. "Why are you not there already?" Sam could hear the faint rustle of papers in the background, the woman clearly multitasking even as she spoke. Trey's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, his fingers drumming once against the leather steering wheel before stilling. "Something came up, and I'm not going to make it to HQ. Will you call him back and reschedule our meeting for Monday, please?" Trey flipped a turn signal, the soft clicking filling the cab as he glanced over his shoulder to make a lane change. The movement was fluid, practiced, his body operating on muscle memory while his mind clearly worked through whatever complications this change would cause. "Okay." The way she drew out the word, Sam could tell she was puzzled. There was a pause, filled only by the gentle hum of the truck's engine, before the woman continued. "That's unusual. Andy is not going to be happy about this." Trey's expression didn't change, but Sam noticed how his thumb rubbed along the steering wheel's edge. The tell of someone used to maintaining composure under scrutiny. "There's an Audi getting towed into the shop with a blown water pump. Make sure it gets whatever it needs done to it. No shortcuts, all high-end. I'll ask around to see if anyone's got an Audi dealership in their portfolio I can get a mechanic and parts from. Anything else?" The woman's tone had shifted to purely professional now, though she could still detect an undercurrent of curiosity threading through her words. "Can you tell whoever's managing this dinner tonight that I am bringing a guest?" "Sure. Anyone I know?" The question came quickly, too quickly, betraying the woman's interest. "No. No one you know. And no, it's not a press opportunity before you ask." There was another pause. The silence stretched between them before the woman spoke again. Sam could sense the unasked questions hovering in the air, could imagine this woman, whoever she was, sitting at a desk somewhere, pen poised over a notepad, trying to piece together what was happening. "Does your friend need anything for dinner tonight?" "I'll handle it. And I need Patricia to make up the guest room, towels, shampoo, conditioner, the works." The woman paused again, longer this time. She could hear a chair creaking through the speakers as if the woman had leaned back in surprise. "Do I even get to ask?" "Nope. You're the boss." The statement didn't sound mad, more amused, tinged with the kind of resignation that comes from years of dealing with someone's impulsive decisions. "Only until I hang up the phone. Thanks, sis. See you later." He disconnected the call with another press of the steering wheel button, and his quick glance in her direction showed a jaw hanging open. Sam's mind was reeling, trying to process everything she'd just heard while simultaneously dealing with the presumption of it all. She could feel heat rising in her cheeks, a mixture of indignation and something that felt dangerously close to excitement. She was pretty sure a protest was building on those beautiful lips, could see the way her chest rose with a sharp intake of breath, her fingers curling against her thighs. He was pretty sure a protest was building on those beautiful lips, could see the way her chest rose with a sharp intake of breath, her fingers curling against her thighs. He was pretty sure a protest was building on those beautiful lips, could see the way her chest rose with a sharp intake of breath, her fingers curling against her thighs. He knew he was being heavy-handed, but there was something about her demeanor, the way her shoulders had tensed, the way her eyes darted toward the door handle, that said, "If you don't take the lead, I'm going to run." The truck slowed down, the engines pitched dropping as they descended an exit ramp that led to a shopping center. The transition from highway to surface streets was smooth, but Sam barely noticed, her mind still spinning. Trey adeptly navigated through heavy Saturday afternoon traffic, weaving between SUVs and sedans with the kind of casual confidence that spoke of years behind the wheel, until they pulled into a space just outside a side door of a large upscale department store. The building's glass facade reflected the afternoon sun, throwing patterns of light across the Turk's hood. Sam couldn't breathe. The air in the cab felt too thick, too warm, pressing against her lungs. She could barely register a response, her thoughts tangled like fishing line, until Trey moved to pull the door handle. Wait a minute, wait a goddamn minute. The words exploded from her, louder than she had intended, bouncing off the truck's interior. He turned his whole body to face her, his arm draped over the top of the steering wheel in a pose that was both casual and attentive. I was wondering when you were going to say something. Sam took a deep breath, faced him, squaring her shoulders, and then promptly lost the breath she just took. The crooked grin playing at the corners of his mouth and the intensity in his hazel eyes made her feel parts of her body she'd long forgotten existed. There was a tingling warmth spreading from her chest downwards, a sensation both foreign and achingly familiar. She was equal parts thrilled with the idea of going to a dinner with him. God, when was the last time she'd been to anything that could be called a dinner? But mortified at the current predicament. Even more mortified that she'd gone all fangirl entranced in his presence, like some teenager at a concert, rather than the independent, self-sufficient woman she had worked so hard to become. Sam let the fact that he thought the situation was bordering on funny fuel her response. She could see it in the way his eyes crinkled at the corners of the barely suppressed amusement in the tilt of his head. She straightened her spine, feeling the leather seep beneath her, and gave him what for. You've whisked my car off to your shop and given the green light to fix it without knowing whether I could afford the repair. You've made arrangements for me to stay at your house tonight when you don't even know me. I could be some crazy psycho stalker type hellbent on your destruction both physically and professionally. And finally, and probably most important, I've seen the women you date, and let's just say I'm not your type. So in summary, what the hell are you doing? The words poured from her like water from a broken dam, each sentence building on the last until she looked practically vibrating with indignation. She watched as the crooked grin left his face and his nostrils flared. The change was instant. The playful race car driver was replaced by something more primal. Oh, shit. The thought ricocheted through her mind as she watched his jaw clench, the muscle there jumping. Without responding, Trey opened the driver's door and exited, the door slamming behind him with enough force to rock the truck slightly. The sound echoed across the parking lot. She watched him walk around the hood, his stride long and purposeful. Muttering to himself, she could see his lips moving, though she couldn't make the word through the windshield. Then he yanked open her door. The sudden rush of outsider carried the scent of hot asphalt and distant rain. Before she could protest, before she could even form a coherent thought, he reached across her lap and unbuckled the belt. The back of his hand brushed against her stomach, sending an unexpected jolt through her nervous system. She then felt his fingers dig into her hips, not painfully, but furtively, possessively, and turn her to face him. The movement was swift, controlled, leaving her breathless and off balance. Since you want to have this out, we will. His voice was low, each word deliberate. I will cover the cost of the repair, and if you don't have all the money, then pay me what you can now and send me the rest later. Or don't. I don't care. If you stay at my house, you don't have to rent a car to go back and forth to the shop to check on Stella. You can use one of mine. Lord knows I have plenty of them. My house is clean, private, and doesn't cost a dime. Hurting me, physically or professionally, would be the last thing you would ever do, since I don't even think you kill bugs. And I'm not even going to touch that last ridiculous comment.
Each point was delivered with the precision of someone used to winning arguments, used to getting his way. But there was something else there, too. something in the way his voice caught slightly on ridiculous comment that told her she'd hit a nerve. He reached for both of her hands, his palms warm and slightly calloused against hers, and helped her out of the truck so that she was standing next to him. The pavement was hot beneath her sandals, the heat radiating up through the rubber soles. Sam had a hard time staying upright on her wobbling legs, the intensity of his stare burning a hole through her. She held on to him for stability, her fingers unconsciously tightening around his. "What I am doing is taking you shopping so that you have something to wear to this dinner I have tonight, and something for you to wear tomorrow." "Why?" Her whispered inquiry was out before she could stop herself, the single word hanging between them like a challenge. His left cheek dimpled, and the grin came back out, transforming his face instantly. The tension in the air shifted, became something charged with possibility. "Why not?" One hand left hers and closed the door. The other kept hers firmly gripped and tugged her toward the store's entrance as if his simple answer was enough. To Sam, it wasn't. It just brought a myriad of follow-up questions that she had to bite her tongue not to ask. Why her? Why now? Why was Trey Stockton, of all people, interested in spending time with someone who'd rather be under a car than at a gala? The questions swirled in her mind like leaves in a storm, but she kept them locked behind her teeth. "I guess I should go along for the ride," she surmised. 2 hours and over $1,000 later, the shopping trip had been a success. If success could be measured in the number of times she had stood slack-jawed at price tags. The store had been a maze of gleaming floors and soft lighting, the air heavy with the scent of expensive perfume. Sam hadn't argued much after their come-to-gazes meeting in the parking lot, even allowing him to put the expenses on his credit card without so much as a blink in protest. She'd watched him sign the receipt with a flourish, his signature as confident as everything else about him, and wondered what it must be like to spend money without checking your bank balance first. Since they had a limited time window, Sam had let the expert at the makeup counter handle her face, surrendering to the woman's gentle fingers an arsenal of brushes, but had insisted she do her own hair. The stylist had looked mildly offended, but Sam needed something, some small piece of control in this whirlwind afternoon. With a couple of supplies provided by the store salon, supplies that smelled of coconut and something floral, it was spun up into an elegant but confining twist that Trey found he liked and loathed equally. He liked the way it showed off the graceful line of her neck, loathed that it hid the natural flow of her chestnut waves. Trey had busied himself in the men's section at the saleswoman's request and was blown away when Samantha stepped out of the dressing room ready for dinner. "You are stunning, Samantha," his voice hoarse with an unnamed feeling. She was wearing a mint green satin dress that reminded her of something Marilyn Monroe would have worn, all dangerous curves and innocent sweetness combined. The fabric caught the light with every movement, seeming to shimmer and flow like water. It clung to every beautiful curve she had, highlighting the dip of her waist, the gentle flare of her hips, and it brought out the color of her eyes until they seemed to glow. The silver-scrapped heels that showed off her cute feet were worth every penny of their exorbitant price. It was all Trey could do to keep his libido in check looking at the siren Samantha had become. This was dangerous territory, this attraction that seemed to pull at him like gravity. She blushed at his compliment, smoothing a hand down her dress as if trying to downplay the curves it accentuated. It was far from her usual fashion, but seeing the look in his eyes made it all worthwhile. "Thank you." At the high-end restaurant in downtown Charlotte, the valet closed the passenger door behind them with practiced discretion. Trey felt Samantha's arm tremble when she looped it through his, then grip him tightly. Her fingers pressed into his jacket, seeking reassurance. The slight tremor in her touch, the way she pressed closer to his side, it all hit him like a bucket of cold water. It dawned on him he was acting like a complete and utter ass. The realization crashed over him. He'd railroaded her on the side of the road, commanded her into his truck, then in the vehicle itself, making decisions about her car, her evening, her accommodation, without so much as asking for her opinion. He had treated her like one of his race strategies: identify the goal, eliminate obstacles, and push through to victory. But she wasn't a race to be won. She was a person with her own life and choices. Regret crept into his conscience for being so forceful in his response to her protest. She had made all valid points, every single one logical and reasonable, until she commented on the women he dated, and then he saw red instantly. That comment had struck something deep, something he didn't want to examine too closely. For reasons he didn't understand, or maybe didn't want to understand, Trey desperately wanted to know anything and everything about Samantha. What made her laugh? What scared her? What did she think about when she was working on cars? But he hadn't even given a thought for her feelings or that she had other responsibilities. There was no ring on her finger, therefore no husband. But he hadn't even asked if she was dating anyone before he'd practically kidnapped her. They were just at the door of the restaurant, close enough that he could hear the soft murmur of conversation from inside, when Trey moved them to the side of the entrance out of the way. A couple passed them, the woman's heels clicking against the pavement in a staccato rhythm. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that made his chest tighten. "An apology," he said honestly, turning to face her fully. The street lights cast shadows across her face, highlighting her cheekbones, the curve of her lips. "I've made much about this without even asking you if you were interested in any of it. I've bullied you from the moment I pulled over to help you. Heck, I don't even know if you have a boyfriend or if there's someone at home waiting. I may thrive on competition and the occasional conflict, but I don't want to get my ass kicked because I stole someone's woman." She laughed softly, the sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The tradition I initially saw in her gaze was replaced with trust and a dose of heat that sent his blood racing. "You really are as formidable as I read or heard, Trey. No wonder you've won at every level you have driven. No one gets anywhere if they don't have passion or determination, and you have it in spades." Trey let out a pent-up breath of relief, the air leaving his lungs in a rush. He hadn't realized until that moment that he was scared she would have taken the out, that she would have walked away, called a cab, and disappeared from his life as suddenly as she had entered it. She held up a finger to his lips before he could respond, the touch electric even through the light pressure. The gesture was bold, unexpected, and it sent a shiver down his spine. Heeding her request, he stayed quiet and fought the instinct to pull the finger into his mouth to taste the salt of her skin. "There is no one waiting at home for me except my brother, and I called him when the saleslady sent me away." Relief flooded through him at her words. "If I really didn't want to be here, I wouldn't. I kill mosquitoes, roaches, and poisonous spiders. I do have a spine." She lifted her chin slightly, a gesture of defiance that he found endlessly endearing. "In all honesty, it's been a while since someone took care of the big things, and I was the object of someone's interests. It feels good, so I figured I'd just go with it."
She paused, took a breath that made the satin of her dress whisper against her skin, and a twinkle formed in her eyes that promised mischief and maybe something more. "And I told you to call me Samantha because I liked the way it sounded coming from you." It was her final admission, delivered with a mixture of vulnerability and courage, and her green eyes sparkling with a touch of mischief that Trey couldn't ignore anymore. The last of his restraint crumbled like a dam giving way. He cupped her cheek and jaw with his free hand, feeling the softness of her skin, the warmth radiating from her, brushing his thumb gently across the downy surface. She leaned into his touch, enough to make his heart stutter. "You are such a beautiful surprise, Samantha." The words came out laden with emotion he wasn't ready to name. "Thank you, Trey, but please do me one favor. Don't forget I'm here with you tonight.
I don't know any of these people, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to mess up any relationships you've built." Trey felt his spine stiffen with anger at the person who had made her feel inferior or forgotten. Someone had hurt her, made her feel like she was an afterthought, and he wanted to find them and make them understand what they lost. He banked it for now, storing it away to examine later, and regretfully dropped his hand from her jaw. "Be yourself, Samantha. That's all you need to do. And you're not leaving my side unless either of us has to go to the bathroom." She laughed, the sound bright and genuine, and lifted her chin at him in that way he was already beginning to recognize as uniquely hers. Deal. He wanted to kiss her so badly, wanted to press her against the restaurant's brick wall and taste that laugh on her lips, but this wasn't the time. No, Trey wanted her to act on her own wishes, to come to him because she wanted to, not because he'd swept her along in his wake. He'd just wait her out, as long as he could, which, judging by the way his pulse raised every time she moved, might not be very long at all. The sponsored dinner had been a 4-hour affair that felt endless and too short. The restaurant's private dining room had all dark wood and crystal, candlelight reflecting off wine glasses and silverware. The conversation had ebbed and flowed around them. Talk of racing, of sponsorship deals, of upcoming events. But Trey had been hyper-aware of Samantha beside him the entire time. True to his word, aside from the occasional trip to the restroom, Trey hadn't left her alone all evening. He constantly kept touching her, his fingers finding the base of her spine where the dress dipped low, or resting just above her elbow where her skin was bare and warm. Each touch was meant to reassure her of his presence, but it reassured him too, assured him that she was real, that she was there, that this wasn't some dream he'd wake up from. The sponsors, for their part, attempted to hide their surprise at her attendance. He'd seen the quick exchanges of glances, the raised eyebrows quickly smoothed away, but were gracious and accommodating. They'd asked about her work, her interests, and she'd answered with a combination of intelligence and self-deprecating humor that had charmed them all. Trey's business partner, Gary Henderson, had peppered her with enough questions that she felt she'd completed the Spanish Inquisition. Gary had that ability to make an interrogation feel like friendly conversation until you realized you told him your life story. Sam had handled it with grace, answering what you wanted, deflecting what she didn't, all while maintaining that easy smile that Trey was beginning to crave. She assumed later she'd passed some unofficial test when Gary declared her delightful. High praise from a man who usually described people as acceptable at best, and offered full use of the team headquarters to outfit Stella any time she wanted. Now, as they waited for the valet to bring the truck around, Sam's feet were killing her. She could feel every step in those beautiful but torturous heels, each one sending a spike of pain up her calves. The balls of her feet burned, and she was ready to crash, to collapse into something soft and horizontal and not move for at least 12 hours. Trey must have sensed her fatigue. Maybe it was the way she'd shifted her weight for the 100th time, or how she'd gripped his arm a little tighter for support, because he leaned in to speak to her. As his lips brushed the crest of her ear, her skin tingled at the sensation, goosebumps raising down her neck and across her shoulders, sending a jolt straight through every nerve ending she possessed. She could smell his cologne more strongly now, mixed with the wine from dinner. "I don't know about you, but I'm ready to go." His breath was warm against her ear, and she had to suppress a shiver that had nothing to do with the cooler evening air. "Please, I'm ready to get out of these heels and all of the spandex that's under this dress." The words were out before she could stop them, her filter apparently dissolved by exhaustion and wine. She heard Trey cough roughly, the sound strangled and surprised. Panicked, she turned and found him nose to nose with her, so close she could see the darker ring around his irises, could count his ash lashes if she wanted to. The unabashed desire in his eyes made her stomach flip and heat pull low in her belly. "Samantha, unless you want me to help, you may not want to provide me with that mental image." His voice had dropped an octave, becoming something dark and promising that made her pulse race. Sam couldn't help but laugh and joke to cover how turned on she was, how her entire body seemed to be vibrating at a frequency only he could hear. Obviously, you've never been witness to a woman trying to wrestle her way out of a body shaper. No matter what you may think, it's not the sexiest thing we do. She tried for light teasing, but her voice came out breathy. His eyes darkened further, if that was possible, and his gaze dropped to her lips before returning to her eyes. "Maybe not, but if it gets you naked, then it's worth it. I have a feeling I won't be disappointed in any way." Again, he had managed to make her speechless, to rob her of words with his directness. He wanted to see her naked. The thought should have scared her, should have sent her winning for the hills. She had known him less than a day, less than 12 hours, really, and Sam had no qualms with his request, none at all. It made her wonder what was so different about Trey that had her willing to throw her 5-date rule out the window. That rule had served her well, had kept her from making impulsive mistakes, from getting hurt. Maybe it was that she was nearly desperate to see him just as pair, to see if the body beneath those clothes lived up to the promise of those strong hands and broad shoulders. Without exchanging any more innuendo, because honestly, her heart couldn't take much more, they said their goodbyes to the remaining dinner guests, and Trey escorted her to his awaiting truck. His hand never left the small of her back, a steady presence that guided her through the restaurant and out into the night. Once seated, the leather cool against her legs where the dress had ridden up slightly, and the truck was rolling out of the parking lot with a smooth purr of the engine, Sam leaned her head against the passenger window. The glass was cool against her temple, soothing the slight headache that was beginning to form from the tight hairstyle and the evening's tension. She watched downtown Charlotte roll away and change into the darkened suburbs, streetlights creating pools of light that the truck passed through. The city sounds faded, replaced by the quiet hum of tires on asphalt and the gentle whisper of the air conditioning. She was acutely aware of Trey beside her, of the way his hand rested on the console between them, of how his fingers occasionally drummed against it in what might be nervous energy or just habit. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it was charged, full of unspoken possibilities and questions neither seemed ready to voice. What was she doing? The question circled in her mind like a restless bird. This morning she had woken up in her own bed, planning nothing more exciting than shopping and eating soul food. Now she was in Trey Stockton's truck, wearing a formal dress that invited as many questions as answers, heading to his house to spend the night. It should have felt wrong, reckless, completely out of character for someone who planned everything down to the last detail. But it didn't. It felt like an adventure, like something she'd remember when she was old and gray.